If you're thinking about visiting or moving to Medellin, Colombia, then choosing the right neighborhood is one of the most important decisions that you'll make. Each neighborhood has a completely different vibe and cost of living. So in this video, I'm gonna go into the best neighborhoods to live in Medellin, Colombia, so that you can make the right choice for you. And if you're new here, I'm Alex. On this channel, I share everything I've learned about leaving the West and living an ideal life in Latin America. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Here's what I will cover in today's video. So we're gonna cover the top 5 neighborhoods in Medellin, and then we're gonna go over one honorable mention that is outside the city that would make sense for some of you, not all of you. So let's get into it. All right, the number one most popular neighborhood in Medellin is Poblado. If you're someone who is brand new to travel, Poblado is going to be a good spot. It is where most of the tourists and expats live in the beginning. So it's going to be a safer location, in my opinion, and not just in safety, but also in language. A lot of people here speak English. You could probably get by with a lot of restaurants just speaking English. So it's going to be more of a convenient transition if you start here. Now, Poblado is the most famous neighborhood for expats and tourists. And it's easy to see why. It does have some of the best nightlife. It has luxury apartments. It has a ton of international restaurants as well. There are some pros and cons to Poblado, living in Poblado. It is one of the more safer neighborhoods in Medellin. I wouldn't say it's actually the safest. I'll say that other cities, other neighborhoods I'll get into, but it is one of the more safer neighborhoods, let's put it. It does have the best nightlife in the city. So if you're someone who is very social, you love going out, you like clubs, you like bars, this is going to be your spot for sure. It does have higher end shopping malls in the area, and it has a lot of co-working spaces. So if you're a digital nomad, you're brand new to the city, good spot to start is definitely in Poblado. Some cons is it is definitely the most expensive area to live in. So if cost of living is important to you, there are some better options that are just as safe and, in my opinion, probably better to live. But just keep that in mind. It is also the most touristy area and feels less authentic, right? So I mentioned in another video that Medellin is not Colombia, and then Poblado is not Medellin. So to make sense of that, Colombia is, as a country, there are cities that have more of an authentic vibe that you can experience more of the culture, feel like you're in Colombia. Medellin is more of a touristy hub. And then when you're in Poblado, you're in like the touristy of the touristy, right? So just keep that in mind. Traffic here gets pretty bad during rush hour. It also can be hilly. I'm someone who prefers to live in flat areas where it's easily walkable. Poblado is not necessarily like that. It's mostly hills. And then you have to travel down to get to more of like the flat areas. But most of the city is very hilly, so it's not the most walkable either. So to summarize, if you want higher end lifestyle, you don't mind paying more money. If you're someone who earns strong remote income, then yeah, live in Poblado. You can definitely live a good life there. But if you want something more local, more authentic, lower cost of living, then keep watching. So the second neighborhood that I would recommend for you is Laureles. All right, this is best for walkability and more of a local vibe. All right, Laureles is a favorite amongst expats who want that balance between city life, also relaxed atmosphere, and authenticity to the country. It is more walkable than Poblado because there aren't hills, which is huge. If you're someone who likes to walk around, if you're someone who wants everything close by, everything's within a 10, 15-minute walk of you, then Laureles is going to be a better option, in my opinion, because it's flat and it's not hilly. So some pros and cons to Laureles. It is a lot more walkable than Poblado, and there are still plenty of parks, cafes. I'd say there's more parks actually than Poblado, and has plenty of cafes, has plenty of restaurants, lower cost of living compared to Poblado. It also feels safe. I lived in Laureles right after Poblado for about a month, and definitely less touristy, although that is expanding. There are more foreigners living in Laureles, but I felt safe living here. It is flat and super walkable. I know I keep coming back to that, but that's important to having a good experience, in my opinion, since you're probably not going to have a car, is to live in a walkable flat area. Some cons is the nightlife is more low key. I'm okay with that. I'm not someone who goes out every night. There's plenty of nightlife in Laureles, in my opinion. but just not going to be as crazy as Poblado. And there's not as many high-rise luxury apartments. But again, there's still sufficient housing here, good apartments here. So the cons aren't really that bad. I'd prefer to live in Laureles over Poblado any day of the week. So if I were moving to Medellin for the first time, Laureles would be one of my top choices. I would choose between Poblado or Laureles. Again, if we're talking about getting your feet wet, you could choose either one of these cities, either one of these neighborhoods, you'll be fine. The way I did it is I chose Poblado and then I went to Laureles, and it was a good transition from one to the other, but you can really get started with either one. I think you'll be good. All right, so the third best neighborhood, well, this isn't necessarily in order. I'm just kind of going over the best neighborhoods in general, but Envigado is going to be best for families and longer term living. Definitely more an authentic experience. It's technically its own city outside of Medellin, but it definitely feels like an extension of Medellin. And it's perfect if you want more of a quieter and if you want more of a residential neighborhood. So some pros and cons to Envigado. I believe it's one of the safer areas, similar to Poblado, even Laureles. It might even be slightly safer than Poblado because you're not more of a target there. As a foreigner. And you're definitely getting a more authentic Colombian experience being in Envigado, which I like. Like I said, it's good for families and longer term living. It's not as touristy as Poblado, which I like. And it's even less touristy than Laureles, which I also like. Some cons is it's not going to be as walkable as Laureles. This place is also very hilly, similar to Poblado. So Poblado, most of it is hilly. Envigado is adjacent to Poblado, and it's also not as walkable until you get down to the near the metro area and near where the Viva Mall is, right? So not the most walkable area, but definitely more authentic, and it's also cheaper as well. You get better cost of living in Envigado than you would Laureles or Poblado. Now, you'll probably need to take taxis and Ubers more often, but the cool thing is there is a metro station that stops in Envigado. So if you ever want to go to Poblado, if you ever want to go to networking events, whatever it is you want to do in Poblado, which has a lot of the nightlife as well, a lot of times you can take the metro there, spend the rest of your night there versus an Uber, because it does get, there is a little more traffic, but you will need to take Ubers and taxis more often living in this area if you want to get to Poblado, if you want to get to Laureles, where a lot of the networking events happen, where a lot of the meetups are, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, if you don't care much for nightlife and you want more of a relaxed lifestyle, then Envigado is a great option. Also, as I mentioned, it feels safe. So to experience outside the touristy areas, which is basically Poblado and some of Laureles, then definitely check out Envigado for a more authentic experience. All right, now the fourth neighborhood, and probably my favorite city, which I was here for a little over a month. Sabaneta is one of the best kept secrets, I believe, in Medellin, okay? Has a strong local culture. It is much cheaper than Poblado, even Laureles, even Envigado. It's actually adjacent to Envigado. So it goes Poblado, Envigado, then Sabaneta, right? So it's a little further out, a little more remote to where all the nightlife is in Poblado, but you still have everything that you need here. So here are some pros and cons into why it's my favorite place to live in Medellin. Rents are much lower. Cost of living is much lower, for one, than all three other neighborhoods I just went over. Now, it feels like a small town, but it's still connected to Medellin. So you get all, now it feels like a small town, but it's still connected to Medellin. So it's still like a small city, right? You get everything that you need. You get the authentic Colombian lifestyle. It's flat, which again is huge. It's super walkable, all right? And I have everything that, when I lived here, I had everything that I needed super close. I had coffee shops, has plenty of coffee shops, had restaurants, even had some nightlife. There's some bars here, right? Grocery stores, gyms, everything that you need is here. Whenever you want to go to Poblado, again, specifically for networking or for nightlife, you want to go to some of the nicer clubs or bars, then you're about 30 minutes out and you can easily take the metro in, right? That's the cool thing about the city, is the metro system is really good. It's really efficient. It's quicker too than taking an Uber, because the way it works is there's like one street that takes you to Poblado. And a lot of times, if you're during certain hours, there's just a lot of traffic and it's going to take a while to get there, like maybe even over an hour just to get to Poblado, definitely to get to Laureles. So you want to take the metro to get there, and then at night take an Uber back where there's less traffic. So you have that option in Sabaneta. Now, the only cons are it is far from the main social areas such as Poblado and Laureles. So again, if you're here for networking purposes, then you are going to be a little further out from everything. And there is less English spoken here compared to Poblado and Laureles. So for this reason, I don't recommend you start in Sabaneta. If you're someone who's brand new to travel, if you're someone who doesn't even speak Spanish, start in either Laureles or Poblado, but eventually definitely check this place out. All right, Sabaneta. I think it's growing. When I was there were more apartment building communities growing up. I think it is the fastest growing city, or the fastest growing neighborhood, let's call it, in Medellin. All right, there's a ton of new apartment buildings going up, a lot of high-rise living, a lot of restaurants that are being started from other foreigners as well. So there's a lot going on in the city. It's been about a year since I've been there, or maybe even a little more. So I'm sure it's probably grown a lot more since then. But definitely check this place out once you're outside the main tourist areas of Poblado and Laureles. Now, the fifth neighborhood that I'm going to recommend is Belén. Now, Belén is located adjacent to Laureles. So you have Poblado, Envigado, Sabaneta on one part of the city, and then you have Laureles and Belén on the other side of the city. All right, now this is a great option for expats who want a more authentic Colombia experience and also want a lower cost of living, even more so than, I think, Sabaneta. Belén is going to be more affordable, the most affordable out of these five, and it's definitely going to give you the most authentic experience. So here are some pros and cons to Belén. You have affordable rent prices. You have a lot of green spaces and parks. This also has a more local feel than Laureles, Poblado, even Envigado. And it's also flat, okay? But it is more spread out, which means it's not as walkable as Laureles or even Sabaneta, even though it's flat because it's a little more spread out. Now, some cons are there aren't many expats or English speakers. And again, I'm saying this because a lot of the reason most people come to Medellin is to get their feet wet, right? So if you don't speak any Spanish, if you've never traveled before, or if you've never been to Colombia or Latin America, then you probably want to be around other tourists and other expats, right? But you're not going to get as many people here like that, which I don't mind. I actually prefer more of a local cultural experience, but that's a con if you're someone who doesn't speak English. Now, some areas here can feel a bit unsafe. So Laureles is definitely going to be your safer option and more touristy option, right? Probably a better place to start is either Laureles or Poblado. And then eventually, if you want to check out more an authentic experience, then yeah, check out Belén as well. And then an honorable mention that I'll get into here is living on a finca, or otherwise known as a farm, in Rio Negro / Maranilla. All right, they basically bordered each other. So if you're looking for something completely different outside of city life, like for me, for instance, I'm from Boston, right? I've always been in the city pretty much my entire life. So for me, I enjoyed getaways to like Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine. Whenever I felt like I wanted something different, more nature, that's where you can get here in Medellin as well. So it's about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Medellin, and it offers a totally unique experience. Rio Negro still is a city that's a lot smaller, but then you have a lot of nature, you have more of a rural setting out here, and you have a little bit of a cooler temperature. So if you feel like high 70-degree weather or mid to high 20s for Celsius is a little too hot for you, if you want something different, a little cooler, number one, Sabaneta is actually a little more cooler when it comes to climate. And then Rio Negro is even a little more cool, right? So if you don't want hot weather all year round, you want a little bit of a change, this is a great getaway. Some pros and cons. So it's going to be much cheaper rent to live out here, for sure. You'll definitely get much more space in terms of land and things like that. The air here, the air quality, I feel, is better as well. You get fresh air, you get quiet surroundings. A lot of people in Medellin, believe it or not, prefer to live in this area, right? These are local people that live in maybe Bejo, where it's really hot. They prefer to be out in this area because it's more peaceful, it's quieter, it's more rural, there's a lot of nature. People are actually happier living out here than in the city from locals, right? For a lot of locals. So this is perfect for people who want to live a little bit outside the city. They want to live in a more rural area. Some cons, you will need a car and a lot of Uber for transportation. This isn't as walkable. Parts of Rio Negro is walkable, but when I stayed on a finca, that was a completely different experience. I'm gonna do another video on that, by the way, as far as finca life in Colombia. So the problem is Ubers are going to take a lot longer to get to you. Some cases I waited like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe even a half hour. And the nearest town or the nearest like places you can go to a bar or a cafe even is going to be maybe like a 20-minute drive for you as well. So in some cases you're talking like 30, 45, maybe even probably not an hour, probably about 30 to 45 minutes just to get to a local coffee shop. So that could be a con, right? For me, it was, assuming you're going to live there for an extended period of time. Also, there's obviously not very much nightlife or a social scene compared to Medellin. So if you're more of a social person, if you need to be around people all the time, then it might not be for you for an extended period of time. But I will say this, if you've ever thought about living on a farm or just want a slower lifestyle, check it out. See if it's for you. You know, that was my thing. Like I said, I'm from Boston. I've always been in the city. I've never really lived on a farm or anything like that, anything rural. So I wanted to check it out. I said, well, what better way to really see if it's for me? You know, and it turned out for me personally, I do prefer city life. I'm still in my 30s. So for me, like living out in the farm or the rural area, it gets pretty boring after a couple weeks. All right. Like I said, I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't order an Uber to get to like even a coffee shop. It was great for a week or two. Really, really tranquil. I had some horses. I had a lot of nature, a lot of birds. Really good for doing deep work. But for me, I need more of a city life. I need to be around more people at this stage in my life. Maybe when I'm 60 or 70 or in my 80s, I'll probably want this instead. And I'm sure some people are going to love this if you love peace and tranquility. But for me personally, right now, this is more of like a 1 to 2 week thing. So that's it for today's video. I hope this video gave you some insight on which neighborhood would make the most sense for you. Again, if you're someone who's brand new, just want to get your feet wet, go with Poblado or Laureles. If you're someone who's more seasoned, you travel to other places and you know you prefer a more authentic vibe, go with Sabaneta, maybe Envigado, maybe even Belén. And if you missed my full cost of living breakdown, then be sure to check that video out so you have an idea of what you'll be spending when you're here. And also, if you want to hear my full experience living here for half a year, my overall thoughts, who would I recommend it for, then be sure to check out that video as well. Once again, thanks so much for watching, guys. If it was valuable for you, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more content like this specific to Latin American cities, then be sure to subscribe and look out for the next video.